Democratic Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina was one of the keys to President Biden's success in 2020, throwing his support behind the president, the Palmetto State's critical primary, which a lot of folks say put Mr. Biden on the path to the White House. And Congressman Clyburn is with us this morning for an exclusive conversation. Congressman, always good to see you.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Let's start with this news conference last night. Again, the news conference was supposed to allay concerns that a lot of folks have, many of them within your own party, about the president's ability to do the job. He starts by confusing his vice president with former President Trump. That was just a few hours after he confused President Putin with President Zelensky. Did he allay those concerns last night?
Well, those of us who are real close watchers of Joe Biden, we do know that he sometimes mangles words and phrases, but all of that is almost natural for people who grew up stuttering, and they do focus a little more. And when you focus a little more, you tend to lose the flow.
But you're not saying that what we've seen from this president over the last few weeks is just a function of him stuttering. I mean, it's more than that.
He doesn't stutter now. He is still working to overcome the stuttering of his childhood. I've been around that condition for a long time, and I know exactly how it operates. But he has one of the best minds that I've ever been around. And the people who've been around him will tell you that. And so I would hope that we will focus on the substance of this man rather than these sometimes misspoken words and phrases and how he has run this country.
But, Congressman, you've got 17 Democrats. One of them is a sitting U.S. Senator who have called on their president to step aside. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi 2 days ago saying, quote, it's up to the president to decide if he's going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. That is not a full-throated endorsement from your friend and former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Should the conversation about the president getting out of this race, should that conversation continue?
No, it shouldn't.
The conversation should be over.
No, the conversation should focus on the record of this administration, on the alternative to his election, and let Joe Biden continue to make his own decisions about his future. He's earned that right, and I am going to give him that much respect. If he decides to change his mind later on, then we will respond to that. We have until the 19th of August to open our convention, and so I would hope that we would spend our time now focusing on the record that we will lay out for the American people, remind the American people of what is in store for them if Project 2025 were to become a law in any form. That is where our focus ought to be.
But Congressman, again, how is this a candidate? How is this a candidacy or candidate that can remain viable if you literally have a Democrat every day calling on him to drop out of the race, down ballot Democrats who are going to be answering questions day in and day out about the president's mental acuity? How is that a campaign that can be successful?
Well, Joe Biden is focused on the future of this country. And I always say the best predictor of future performance is past behavior. Let's continue to compare the past behavior of Joe Biden as to the past behavior of his opponent, Donald Trump, and let that be a guide to our reactions going forward. And I think if we do that, we will give the American people exactly what they need to make the choice for our children and grandchildren. That's what this campaign is all about. It's about whether or not we're going to have a viable democracy.
But you recognize there are a lot of folks in this country, many of whom in your own party, who don't think this is the same Joe Biden that we saw 4 years ago. You've known him for decades. You're traveling with him next week. You've spent more time with the president than just about anybody else in the House. Is this the same Joe Biden that we saw 2 years ago?
Well, look, I grew up...
Is it the same Joe Biden?
No. I'm not the same Jim Clyburn that I was 4 years ago. And given a few, 10 more days?
You'll be 84.
I'll be 84 years old. That's the 45th anniversary of my 39th birthday, however. It's not another birthday. It's an anniversary of my 39th. But I am a bit wiser than I was before. And I'm a bit wiser than I am on many fronts. And so you are better. But you remember, it's biblical. You know, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Joe Biden has put away childish things because he's become a man. His opponent is still being a child.
But, Congressman, you will acknowledge that the president that we've seen over the last few weeks, last few months, he is not the man that you endorsed 4 years ago. But in terms of mental acuity, in terms of his physical ability, is he still the same man?
Physically?
Yeah.
I don't think so. And mentally, I do think so. He is still grasping what this country is all about. He knows what a democracy is all about. He knows what we need to do as a country to take advantage of the future and maintain our relationship with all of our allies around the country, around the world, and what we need to do for our constituents throughout the country.
Last night he said he would be willing to take another neurological exam. Should he?
Well, he should do what his doctors told him to do. I'm not going to put myself in the place of his doctors, and I don't think any of us should.
He's done fewer news conferences than any president, the last 7 presidents, fewer news conferences, fewer interviews like this. Do you think this White House has shielded him too much?
Well, I don't know what the magic number would be, but I do believe that he is pacing himself.
You can acknowledge he has not been out there as much as some of his predecessors. Has that been to his detriment?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. I do know that all of us, I've been asking him to do more town hall style meetings because I think that he performs well when he interacts with people. And I think people feel better about him when they're allowed to interact with him. I don't want people to think that you got to be going through the trials of a press conference. If you let the press look in on your interactions.
But Congressman, don't you think that would help allay a lot of the concerns that people have in this country, that the president's just not up to the job, if they saw and heard him in more unscripted settings on a more regular basis?
Well, that may be true. I'm not saying that won't be the case, but I'm saying that is not required in order to prosecute the case. Get out among the people.
Lastly, last night the president did acknowledge that there are other Democrats who could beat Donald Trump, including his vice president, Kamala Harris. Hypothetically, if the president does decide to step aside and it's Vice President Harris, does she have your full-throated endorsement?
Absolutely. No question about that. She has acquitted herself well in the job as vice president, and he never would have picked her in the first place if he did not think that she was capable of being president.
Yeah.
And I think that she's demonstrated, especially in these recent weeks, when all of this microscope has been focused on her and him, she has acquitted herself famously.
Knowing what you know now, would you still have endorsed the president 4 years ago?
Absolutely.
All right. Congressman Clyburn, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Happy early birthday.
Thank you so much.
Savannah.
All right, Craig, Congressman, thank you. I want to turn to Kristen Welker, moderator of Meet the Press. Congressman Clyburn gets to listen to as we analyze this, but here's what I heard. He's sticking with Biden, but he left open the possibility that Biden could change his mind and mentioned that specifically we have until August 19th to make up our minds. I'm looking at Congressman Clyburn. You can correct me if I'm wrong, sir. That's what I wrote down. Okay, so to me, he's trying to close the door on the speculation, but he didn't shut it tight. Kristen, is that what you heard?
Savannah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Congressman Clyburn would agree because he said, quote, let Joe Biden continue to make up his mind about the future. As you say, the congressman delivered a full-throated endorsement this morning. There's no doubt about that. But that line is going to be significant. It echoes what we heard from former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who was asked about the fact that Joe Biden's been very clear. He has made up his mind. You heard that last night in the press conference, Savannah. But here you have Pelosi. Here yet again, you have Congressman Clyburn just leaving the door open just a crack to the possibility, that President Biden could make a different decision. So there's no doubt there are going to be some discussions about that.
I'm going to do something unorthodox because I still have Congressman Clyburn. So did we read you right, sir? This rarely happens that we get to do instant analysis. Did you leave the door open just a little bit for these continued questions about President Biden? Because he said he made up his mind. And you're saying...
And I took him at his word.
19th.
I took him at his word, and that's why I am all in. I'm riding with Biden no matter what direction he goes, no matter what method he takes. I'm with Joe Biden. And if he were to change his mind, I'll just answer the question that I would be all in for the vice president.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much. Kristen, thank you very much. Lots to talk about Sunday. Meet the Press, including exclusive interviews with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham and Democratic Senator Chris Coons, co-chair of President Biden's campaign. And coming up Monday, Lester Holt sitting down one-on-one with the president, the complete and exclusive conversation airing in a primetime special starting 9 o'clock Eastern Time.
To have all this going on in the studio
Craig,
all at once.
You're making news around the world here because Congressman Clyburn is so influential. And as you said in your interview, he really was sort of single-handedly saved the Biden campaign in 2020. So everyone's hanging on this man's words.
Yeah. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the president says to Lester over the next week or so as well.
Yeah.
But thank you. I enjoy the instant analysis. By the way.
I know. Well,
I should do more of that.
too.
Couldn't resist. Couldn't resist.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss the Today Show every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on our streaming channel, Today All Day. To watch, head to today.com/allday or click the link right here.